I pulled into the driveway 3 days ahead of schedule. The offshore platform manager had called an early evacuation due to Hurricane Bernice, tracking toward the Gulf. 6 months on that rig, and I'd imagined this moment differently maybe. Emma running out to meet me, maybe Rachel smiling from the porch. Instead, the house sat quiet under the August sun, paint peeling worse than I remembered. The key stuck in the lock like it always did. Inside, everything looked too clean, too organized. Rachel's doing, probably. My new wife had a thing about order. "Rachel?" I called out. "Emma?" Silence. I checked Emma's room first. Her bed was made military tight, which wasn't like her at all. My 9-year-old daughter usually left her art supplies scattered across every surface. The colored pencils sat in a perfect row on her desk. Her sketchbook was missing. My phone buzzed. Rachel's name lit up the screen. "Daniel, what are you doing home?" Her voice had that edge I'd learned to recognize over our 8 months of marriage. Storm cut the rotation short. "Where's Emma?" A pause. "Too long. She's at the youth ministry camp. Remember? I told you about Pastor Richard's summer program." I hadn't remembered. 6 months of 12-hour shifts and satellite phone calls that cut out every few minutes, details blurred together. But something felt off. "When did she leave?" 2 weeks ago. "Daniel, she's having an amazing time. Pastor Richard says she's really thriving there. Learning discipline, making friends. I want to see her." "Don't be ridiculous. You'll disrupt the whole program. These kids need structure, not parents showing up whenever. Give me the address, Rachel." Another pause. I heard her breathing change. "Fine. But you're going to embarrass her. Grace Fellowship Church, County Road 47, about 40 minutes west. Daniel, please don't make a scene." I was already grabbing my truck keys. The drive took 35 minutes. I pushed the speed limit through farmland that stretched flat and endless under a sky that looked like bleached bone. County Road 47 turned to gravel, then to dirt. The GPS lost signal twice. Grace Fellowship Church appeared like a mirage, old limestone building with a white steeple, surrounded by cotton fields that went on forever. A newer addition had been built onto the back, metal siding painted to match the stone, but not quite succeeding. 2 pickup trucks sat in the gravel lot. No sign of kids anywhere. I parked and walked toward the main entrance. Locked. I tried the side door, also locked. That's when I heard it. Singing. Children's voices, thin and reedy in the heat. I followed the sound around the building, past a rusted playground with a chain-link fence. The cotton field started about 50 yards from the church. The plants stood waist-high, bowls white against the green, and there were children in the field. 15, maybe 20 of them, ages ranging from maybe 7 to 14. They wore wide-brimmed hats and long sleeves despite the heat. They moved slowly down the rows, bags slung over their shoulders. A man in a cowboy hat stood at the field's edge, walkie-talkie in hand. He was watching them work. My daughter was in the 3rd row. I recognized her by the way she moved, even though her back was turned. Emma had her mother's walk, my first wife, Sarah, who died 4 years ago in a car accident. Emma wore a hat too big for her head. Her bare arms were covered in scratches. She stumbled, caught herself, kept picking. Everything in me went cold and sharp. I walked straight into the field. "Hey!" The man with the walkie-talkie spotted me. "This is private property. You can't." "That's my daughter." I was close enough now to see Emma's face. Sunburned, lips cracked and bleeding. Her hands were stained with cotton plant residue and something that might have been blood. She looked up. Her eyes went wide. "Daddy?" Then she started crying. Just collapsed right there in the dirt, sobbing so hard her whole body shook. I was running. The man with the walkie-talkie stepped in my path. But I'd spent 6 months hauling equipment on an oil rig. I pushed past him like he wasn't there. Emma threw herself at me. She weighed nothing. When had she gotten so thin? "Daddy, Daddy, you came back. They said you abandoned me. They said you didn't want me anymore, and I had to work to earn my keep. Pastor Richard said I was a burden, and this was my punishment for being bad." "Shh, baby. I've got you. I've got you." The other children had stopped working. They were staring at us. Some of them looked hopeful. Some just looked scared. "You need to leave." The man with the walkie-talkie was on his radio now. "We got a situation here. Need backup at the north field." I picked Emma up. She wrapped her arms around my neck and wouldn't let go. Where are their parents? I asked him. These kids are in Pastor Richard's care. Legal guardianship transferred. Now get off this property before. Call the police. Call them right now. The police know all about our ministry. We got permits. These kids are learning valuable life skills, work ethic, better than having them in the system. I started walking back toward the church, Emma still in my arms. The other children watched us go. One little boy, couldn't have been more than 7, whispered, "Can you take me too?" That broke something in me. 3 men came around the church building as I reached the parking lot. One of them was older, maybe 60, wearing pressed slacks and a polo shirt with Grace Fellowship Ministry embroidered on it. Pastor Richard, I assumed. Mr. Martinez. His voice was smooth, practiced. I understand you're concerned about Emma, but my daughter was picking cotton in 100-degree heat. We're teaching these children the value of hard work. Emma has some behavioral issues, as I'm sure you're aware. Her stepmother thought structure would take me to wherever they sleep. Right now, Pastor Richard smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. I'm afraid that's not possible. You're disrupting a carefully designed program. Rachel has legal custody while you're offshore, and she's made Emma a ward of our ministry for the summer. We have all the proper paperwork. Then let me see the paperwork. It's in my office, which is locked for the day. Emma's face was buried in my shoulder, but I felt her shaking. Daddy, please don't leave me here. Please. I'll be good. I promise I'll be good. I looked at Pastor Richard, at the 3 men flanking him, at the empty parking lot and the fields beyond. I'm taking her. That would be kidnapping. She's my daughter, and she's in our legal care. If you remove her, I will call the sheriff. Do you really want to put Emma through that? Having her father arrested in front of her? My phone had 1 bar of signal. I pulled it out and called Rachel. She answered on the first ring. Daniel, what did you do? Did you sign custody papers? It's not custody. It's just a summer program agreement. Pastor Richard explained that Emma needed discipline while you were gone. She was acting out, talking back, spending all her time drawing instead of focusing on school. You sent our 9-year-old daughter to pick cotton. That's not what the ministry teaches life skills. They garden and learn responsibility. Pastor Richard's program has helped dozens of troubled youth. She's not troubled. She's a child. And you gave her away. I gave her structure, something you've never been able to provide because you're always gone. Emma was crying again. I hung up and looked at Pastor Richard. I'm leaving with my daughter. If you try to stop me, I will make this very difficult for you. The pastor's smile faded. He nodded to the 3 men. Gentlemen, please escort Mr. Martinez to his vehicle. Emma will remain here. The first man grabbed my arm. I shifted Emma to my left side and used my right elbow. 6 months of hauling chain and handling heavy equipment had kept me stronger than I looked. The man went down. The second man was smarter. He didn't try to grab me. He went for Emma. I don't remember exactly what happened next. There was shouting. One of them had pepper spray. I turned so it hit my back instead of Emma's face. Someone hit me in the kidney. I kept moving toward my truck. Emma was screaming. The third man tried to wrestle her away from me. That's when I heard the siren. A sheriff's cruiser pulled into the lot, lights flashing. Everything stopped. The deputy who got out was young, maybe 25. He looked at the scene, me holding my crying daughter, 3 men surrounding me, Pastor Richard standing back with his phone out recording everything. Someone want to tell me what's going on here? Pastor Richard stepped forward, all concern and wounded dignity. Deputy Brooks, thank goodness you're here. This man is trying to kidnap one of our ministry children. He assaulted my staff. I have the whole thing on video. That's my daughter. I was still holding Emma, who had her face buried in my shirt. Emma Martinez. Check her ID. Check mine. Deputy Brooks looked uncertain. Sir, I'm going to need you to put the child down. No. Sir, look at her. I turned, so he could see Emma's sunburned face, her cracked lips, her scratched arms. Look at these other kids. I gestured toward the field, where children were still visible in the rows. You think this is normal? Deputy Brooks's expression changed. He'd seen something he couldn't unsee. Pastor Richard, I'm going to need to see the premises. Of course, but you'll need a warrant for. I got probable cause sitting right there in that field. Sir, I'm asking nice. Show me where these children sleep. What happened next took 4 hours. Deputy Brooks called for backup. 2 more cruisers arrived, then a state trooper, then someone from Child Protective Services. Pastor Richard tried to play cooperative, but his staff kept interfering. One of them tried to run. That's when they found the locked rooms in the basement. 17 children were sleeping there. 4 hours a night, they'd later testify. The rest of the time was work or discipline. I sat in my truck with Emma while police went through the building. She'd stopped crying, but wouldn't let go of my hand. A paramedic checked her over dehydration, malnutrition, heat exhaustion, minor injuries from cotton plants and overwork. She needs to go to the hospital, the paramedic said. I'm not leaving my dad, Emma said. First words she'd spoken in an hour. I'll follow the ambulance, I told her. I promise I'm not going anywhere. By sunset, they'd found the financial records. Pastor Richard's ministry was selling the cotton to legitimate textile companies. The children weren't being paid. Most of their parents thought they were at a free summer camp. A few had signed custody agreements like Rachel, not understanding what they meant. 43 children total, spread across 3 locations. Rachel showed up around 8 p.m. She looked shocked, scared. She tried to talk to Emma, but my daughter turned away. I didn't know, Rachel kept saying. Pastor Richard told me it was like Boy Scouts, character building. I didn't know. You didn't ask, I said. The CPS worker took Emma's statement. My daughter described days that started at 5 a.m. Breakfast was instant oatmeal. Work until noon. Lunch was peanut butter sandwiches. More work until dinner, usually rice and beans. Then discipline time in the basement, where Pastor Richard would lecture them about sin and laziness, and how they needed to earn God's love through suffering. If they complained, they got locked in the meditation room, a closet with no windows. Emma had been locked in there twice for asking about me. They arrested Pastor Richard at 9 p.m. He maintained his calm right up until the handcuffs went on. Then he started shouting about religious persecution, about his rights, about how those children needed him. Rachel was arrested too. Turned out she'd signed more than just a summer camp agreement. She'd been recruiting other mothers, telling them about this amazing program. 8 families had sent their kids based on her recommendation. I didn't feel sorry for her. At the hospital, they gave Emma the 4 fluids and treated her injuries. Nothing permanent, the doctor said. Her body would heal. The nightmares took longer. The trial lasted 6 months. I'd quit the oil rig by then, taken a job at a local welding shop, stayed close to Emma. We moved to a small apartment in town, just the 2 of us. Pastor Richard got 40 years federal prison for labor trafficking, child abuse, and fraud. No parole eligibility. 10 of his staff members got sentences ranging from 10 to 25 years. Rachel got 25 years. During her testimony, something came out that explained a lot. She'd been trafficked as a child herself, not for labor, but for other things she wouldn't talk about. She genuinely believed she was helping these kids learn discipline. The kind of discipline she thought might have saved her. It didn't make what she'd done right, but it made it make sense in a horrible way. The other 42 children went home to their families. Some were in worse shape than Emma. One boy, Miguel, didn't speak for 3 months. A girl named Sophie had scars from infected cuts that hadn't been treated, but they were free. Emma started therapy twice a week. For the first 2 months, she wouldn't draw. Said her hands were for working, not wasting time on art. That hurt worse than anything. Then one morning I woke up to find her sitting at the kitchen table with her colored pencils spread out. She was drawing our old house, the one where she'd lived with her mother before the accident. "Can we go visit Mama's grave?" she asked. We went that afternoon. Slowly, very slowly, Emma came back. She smiled sometimes. She drew more. She made friends at her new school, real friends, not children forced to work beside her. A year after the trial ended, the community center asked if Emma would do an art show. They were hosting an event for trafficking survivors, and they wanted the children involved to showcase their healing. Emma wasn't sure at first, but she'd been drawing a lot lately. Pictures of fields, but with flowers instead of cotton. Pictures of children playing, pictures of chains breaking. "I want to call it Finding Light," she said. The show was on a Sunday afternoon. 40 people came, families of the rescued children, social workers, some of the police officers who'd worked the case. Deputy Brooks showed up in his dress uniform. Emma's art hung on the walls. Each piece had a small card with the title and a short description she'd written. One of them said, This is what freedom looks like when you've forgotten what it means. I stood in the back, watching people move from picture to picture, watching Emma explain her work to a woman who was crying, watching Sophie and Miguel laugh at something together near the refreshment table. Deputy Brooks came over to stand beside me. "You did good, Martinez. That day you wouldn't put her down, wouldn't let them take her. That was the right call." "I almost didn't come home early," I said. "If that storm had tracked north instead of west, I'd have been on that rig another 2 months. She'd have been there all summer. But you did come home. And you trusted your gut. That's what saved her." "Maybe. But I thought about all the times I hadn't been there. All the months offshore, while Sarah was sick, while Emma was learning to live without her mother. All the times I'd chosen the paycheck over being present. I'd gotten lucky. One storm, one schedule change, and I'd found her in time. Not every parent got that lucky." Emma finished talking to the crying woman and looked around the room. When she spotted me, her whole face lit up. She waved me over. "Dad, come see this. Mrs. Henderson wants to buy 3 of my paintings. She says they're for her daughter's therapy center." I walked over. Emma grabbed my hand. She still did that sometimes, like she needed to make sure I was real. "Which ones?" I asked Mrs. Henderson. She pointed to a series Emma had called The Breaking. 3 paintings that showed the same cotton field at different times of day: dawn, noon, sunset. In each one, the chains lying in the dirt grew lighter, more transparent, until in the sunset image, they were barely visible. "They're perfect," Mrs. Henderson said. "They show that healing isn't immediate, it's gradual. And the chains don't disappear, they just lose their power." Emma squeezed my hand. Later that night, after we'd taken down the artwork and loaded it into the truck, Emma fell asleep on the drive home. I carried her inside. She was getting too big for that. Almost 10 now, but she was tired. As I tucked her in, she opened her eyes. "Dad?" "Yeah, baby? Do you think Mama would be proud of me?" My throat went tight. She'd be so proud she'd burst, just like I am. Even though I got tricked? Even though I went with Rachel? "Emma, you were 9 years old. You trusted the adults in your life because that's what you're supposed to do. What happened wasn't your fault." Pastor Richard said. Pastor Richard was a liar who hurt children. Nothing he said was true. She nodded, eyes already closing again. "Okay. Love you, Dad. Love you more." I stood in her doorway for a long time after she fell asleep, watching her breathe, thinking about how close I'd come to losing her. Not just physically, but losing who she was, that bright, creative, trusting kid who drew pictures and believed in good people. The experts who testified at the trial said there were thousands of operations like Pastor Richard's across the country. Not all of them used child labor. Some used religious indoctrination. Some used fake therapeutic programs. Some used the promise of education or athletics. But they all had one thing in common. They targeted vulnerable families, single parents, families in poverty, immigrants who didn't understand the system, people who were desperate for help and willing to trust authority figures. I'd been vulnerable, 6 months offshore, recently remarried, trying to believe Rachel could give Emma the stability I couldn't provide. I'd wanted so badly for it to work that I hadn't asked enough questions. That was the lesson that stayed with me. Trust your instincts as a parent, even when it means questioning the people you want to trust. Even when it means admitting your own choices might have been wrong. Because the alternative, ignoring that voice that says something isn't right, can cost everything. 3 years later, Emma was 12 and thriving. She'd won a regional art competition. She had a therapist she actually liked. She still had nightmares sometimes, but less often. I'd started volunteering with a nonprofit that educated parents about trafficking warning signs. We gave talks at schools, at community centers, at churches. We taught people to ask questions. Where exactly is this program located? Can I visit any time? What are the sleeping arrangements? Are the children allowed to call home? We taught them that legitimate programs welcomed parent involvement. That if someone tried to isolate your child, that was a red flag. That no amount of structure or discipline was worth your child's safety. And we shared Emma's story, with her permission. She'd written it down herself, as part of her therapy. 6 pages about what happened, what she felt, what she wanted other kids to know. Her therapist said sharing it could be empowering, taking back control of her narrative. The last paragraph said, "I thought my dad had abandoned me because that's what they told me. But he came for me the first chance he got. He fought for me even when it was hard. That's what real love looks like. Not the fake kind that Pastor Richard talked about. The real kind that shows up and doesn't let go. I'd read that paragraph maybe 100 times and cried every single time. On the 3-year anniversary of the rescue, we went back to County Road 47. The church was gone, torn down after the trial. The land had been sold, and someone had planted something other than cotton. Sunflowers. Looked like. Emma stood at the edge of the field, now full of bright yellow blooms instead of white bowls. "It's better like this," she said. "Yeah. Do you think the other kids are okay? Miguel and Sophie and everyone? I think they're doing their best, just like you." She nodded. "I want to find them someday. When we're all grown up, have a reunion or something. Show each other who we became. That's a good idea. Because we're not just survivors, you know? We're more than what happened to us." I pulled her into a hug. "When did you get so wise?" "I've always been wise. You just weren't paying attention." She was right about that. We stood there for a while, watching the sunflowers sway in the breeze. The field looked nothing like it had that August afternoon when I'd found her. But I'd never forget it, the heat, the fear. The moment I'd seen my daughter in those rows, and known that something evil had taken root in a place that was supposed to be holy. Evil often hides in plain sight. In churches, in schools, in programs that promise to help. It uses the language of care while inflicting harm. It counts on shame and silence to keep operating. The only weapon against it is vigilance, and love, and people who refuse to look away. As we walked back to the truck, Emma said, "Hey, Dad, thanks for coming home early that day. Best decision I ever made." "Well, second best. First best was having me." I laughed. "You're right. That's definitely number one." She climbed into the truck, already pulling out her sketchbook. Drawing the sunflowers, probably. Turning something painful into something beautiful. That's what she'd always done, even when she was too young to name it. And watching her do it, that was my reminder that healing is possible. That children are resilient. That even when we fail them, even when systems fail them, they can find their way back to light. But they shouldn't have to do it alone.